Good evening and welcome to our Wednesday night program. To all our audience out there, tonight we announced on Monday that the moderators for Wednesday they were unavailable, so Noir asked Dr. Rose and I to sit in for today's program. So we want to thank Noir Singh for making this platform available, and of course to Lekram Ramprasad, who will be our technical specialist for this evening. We want to thank your audience for joining us tonight. We have a very interesting topic to talk about, which is cancer. And we know cancer has decimated families. Cancer has caused tremendous pain. It's very costly to treat in many cases. And there, of course, there are different kinds of cancer. So tonight we have with us, no stranger to the Guyanese public, Dr. Emanuel Cummings is the Dean for the Faculty of Medicine at the University of Guyana, and he's also the Vice Chancellor. Dr. Dean, Dr. Emanuel Cummings, welcome to the program tonight.
Okay, good evening. Let me just give you some corrections. No, I'm the former Dean, I'm not the Dean. I'm not the Dean of the Faculty of, it's now College of Medical Sciences. I used to be the Dean. And I'm not the Vice Chancellor either. I'm the Deputy Vice Chancellor, right? I'm the Deputy Vice Chancellor. And also, I am a professor of biochemistry and molecular medicine in the School of Medicine in the College of Medical Sciences. I've taught biochemistry for over 30 years in the medical school, molecular medicine and biochemistry. My research area is in the area of obesity, cancer, diabetes. My dissertation, that's for my doctoral degree, PhD, at the University of Central Lancashire, was in the area of diabetes and cancer. Most of my publications have been in that area, looking at new treatment, new therapies, adjunct therapy for cancer, particularly. And so this evening, I really want to talk about, cancer and some of the work that I would have done and some of the work which we're doing with respect to the treatment of cancer. The whole goal is to make a better life for cancer patients. Most physicians will give them 5 years. We want to give them more than 5 years and also better quality of life. Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Cummings, for correcting me. Yes, I didn't realize I mentioned it, Vice Chancellor. You're a Deputy Vice Chancellor, and you're the former Dean of the School of Medicine. Dr. Cummings, and of course with me, of course, is Dr. Rose, the co-host. Dr. Rose, welcome.
Thank you, Charles, and welcome. It's a pleasure having you here tonight.
So, Dr. Cummings, as one of our proficient doctors in Guyana and researcher fighting this dreaded disease of cancer, can you give us a synopsis of what is the state of the cancer population in Guyana?
Now, I like to start from a global perspective.
Okay.
So that we can understand. It's the second major cause of death in the world. 1 in every 6 persons, according to the WHO, would have died from cancer. Now, the most common types are gastrointestinal, lung, breast, cancer of the cervix, prostate. Those are the most common types. There are many other types, but those are the most common types. Now, the WHO has sorry about that. See the difficulty using your phone, persons call you, right? The WHO has reported for Guyana, and this was reported by the Ministry of Health, that the most common types are cervix, cancer of the cervix, breast, prostate, colon. The age group that's mostly affected, those persons older than 75 and 15 to 39, which is our working population. But prostate cancer seems to be a big problem. And I just wanted to talk a bit in terms of the state of this, not only in Guyana, but the Caribbean of itself. That when you look at the Caribbean region is ranked very, very high with respect to the number of prostate cancer cases worldwide, which refer to as in terms of the morbidity. But in terms of mortality, in terms of prostate cancer deaths, the Caribbean region is ranked number one in the world. And if we to go by country, Barbados, Trinidad, Martinique are highly ranked. They're in the top 10 in the world. And so that's country by country. But as a region, prostate cancer is very, very high, very, very high up in terms of it's ranked number one in the world in the Caribbean region with respect to that. In Guyana, of course, cervical, breast, prostate, some of the when you look in terms of the African population, persons of African origin, more likely to have cancer of the prostate, even though it can affect any ethnicity, but it's seen more in the Black population. Breast, most of the persons again of Africa, even though it can affect anyone, cervical cancer, you find in the indigenous population as well as any persons can be affected once you're exposed to the risk factor. Cancer of the stomach, the pancreas, those are some that are growing in numbers, and so that's just a general overview as to what is it's in the top 5 cases to the mortality rate here in Guyana. It ranked in the top 5. Yes.
Okay, Doc, that's very interesting. What is glaring? We just mentioned prostate cancer is the highest in the Caribbean. We're number 1 in the world. Now, is prostate cancer generally men, or is it affect any other sex except men?
Only men have prostate, so it would only affect men. But also, I just wanted to also and I deliberately said it mostly affected the lifestyle, and this is a question which sometimes is misunderstood. When we say that most of the African men tend to have prostate cancer, even though it can affect any ethnicity, I want to go away and say the African men. And there are 2 issues I just wanted to point out. Vitamin D, the vitamin D that became very famous not so long ago during the COVID pandemic. It was one of the vitamins that was highly prescribed and used by persons to prevent and to treat COVID. But there's some studies that have actually shown that in the case of prostate cancer, and one of the reasons why Black men are at risk, because vitamin D deficiency has been linked to prostate cancer. Now, being dark, we get our vitamin D from the sun. No, not really from the sun. The action of sunlight on 7-dihydrocholesterol under the skin. So exposure to sunlight help in the synthesis of vitamin D. Now, when you're dark, you have to spend more time in the sun in order to get your vitamin. Persons of lighter complexion seems to synthesize much more vitamin D than persons of darker complexion, and so that's one of the reasons why I find persons. And if you look at some studies between the country and the city, persons live in rural areas, you'll find the men that live in the rural areas have a lower risk because they're more out in the sun working, whereas those who live in the city, they're always in the car, they're in the air-conditioned building, they're wearing jackets and tie and all, they're not exposed to the sun. And so the recommendation is that you should have, and that's the early morning sun, have 30 minutes of sunlight in the morning where you can get your adequate amount of of vitamin D. In countries like in the UK, where you hardly see the sun, it's highly recommended that persons do take vitamin D. Also, just want to mention, there's some studies that came out of Trinidad and Tobago, and this was presented a few years ago at the Caribbean Public Health Agency conference, where they're actually, and this was done by a colleague of mine, Professor Ramdat, who actually did work comparing the Afro-Trinidadian and the Indo-Trinidadian, and they saw that the Afro-Trinidadian had a higher rates of prostate cancers compared to the Indo-Trinidadian. And when they looked at the lifestyle in terms of diets, it boiled down to the difference in three foods that were more common in the Indo-Trinidadian as compared to the Afro-Trinidadian. And those three foods were curry, watermelon, and tomatoes. Curry, watermelon, and tomatoes. And what we have, because that's a turmeric, which is in curry and which is very much part of the Asian diet, helps. It helps in the reduction of cancer in general, and in this case, prostate cancer. And watermelon and tomatoes, because of lycopene, which are antioxidants, and you will notice in the literature it speaks about cooking of tomatoes. When you raw tomato, you do not get your lycopene from raw tomato. You have to cook it. When you cook it, that's when you get the lycopene, which is rich in antioxidants and also helps in the development of cancer itself.
Very interesting.
Very long.
Very interesting, Doc. So prostate cancer is to men. What is it to women? What type of cancer women got most?
Breast cancer. That's more common in women. If I talk a bit about carcinogenesis and because if we to go back and to try to understand, try to for the benefit of the population out there, so they can understand. Cancer of itself is a genetic disease. It's a genetic disease that is influenced by the environment. There are a lot of environmental factors that can trigger changes in our genes. Mutation, we call it. Change in the structure of DNA, which predisposes you to cancer. Now, there is this gene called the BRCA1 and the BRCA2 gene, which is associated with breast cancer. It's also, there are studies now showing that it's also associated with prostate cancer, mutations in the BRCA1 and the BRCA2 genes. And so what happens is that you find that because we do not do genetic testing, we cannot detect it very early. We do a mammogram, for example. You recommend that a woman do a mammogram in her 40s. But then you see in carcinogenesis, when you have that mutation, and that can start maybe in a young girl when she's in her 20s. Because if you're looking for, let's say, a lump in the breast, let's say at 40, 45, 50, but that carcinogenesis would have started maybe when she was 25 or 30, because it takes, according to molecular studies, it takes about 20 to 25 years for a clinical cancer to show up. And so what happens, and when you look at the statistics, if we compare the developed world with the underdeveloped world, talking about breast cancer, the rates are similar. But there's a huge difference in terms of mortality, because those living in the developed world are more likely to get genetic testing done, whilst we don't do genetic testing in this part of the world. And so we cannot detect that mutation in that gene at a very early stage where we can have an intervention. And so that is something which I know that we're working to have biological tests, genetic testing, so that we can have early, apart from the traditional screening that we do, the tumor markers, the mammograms and CT scans and all those things which you can do to detect and the biopsies, in order to look at cellular changes. But the early genetic test, that mutation, and that's different between the developed and the underdeveloped world, where they have the benefit of genetic testing. You can, particularly if you have a family history of breast cancer, and or even a family history of ovarian cancer, because there is some studies linking now ovarian. Let's say you have a family with ovarian cancer, could also be, you can have a risk of breast cancer as well, and so that's why history is very important, and so you have that history. It's always recommended that you do genetic testing. So the early you were able to detect that mutation, you can have an intervention at an early stage. And that's why I usually say that sometimes our diagnosis is 20 years late. And that's the difference between the developed world and the undeveloped world.
Dr. Rose?
Yes, welcome again, Dr. Cummings. I want to go back to something you said. Cancer is the cause of death worldwide, the second cause of death worldwide. What is it in Guyana?
It's ranked between, it's in the top 10. The last report I saw is between 4 to 5. It's in the top 5. And that's where it is. And this was reported by PAHO. This was data which PAHO would have analyzed of work from the country, from the cancer registry. It is within the top 5. But the region as a whole, it is also ranking among the top 5 as well.
I want to turn to breast cancer. The World Health Organization reported in 2018 that in Guyana, breast cancer is responsible for 1.25% of the population, or 25 per 100,000, which places Guyana 20th in the world. Has there been efforts to reduce or to remedy the situation, prevent women from having breast cancer, tell them about already testing and so forth?
Well, certainly I spoke about that. As I said, there is screening is recommended, self-breast examination. There's a lot of, when a woman goes to see a primary care physician, there's a lot of education done in terms of
can you explain what self-breast examination means to that? Tell it to our women folks.
Self-breast examination, a woman is taught to examine her breasts on a monthly basis so she can detect a lump in her breast, for example. That's what meant by self-breast examination. Okay. Also, they would go and see their physician whenever they go to primary care at a particular age. The physician would also examine the breast, and also, they, as I said, you can do a CT scan, you can do a mammogram. These are imaging tests which can be done to detect breast cancer. But as I said, we really need to move to the point of genetic testing, because that will even diagnose it even much earlier. And I think, particularly, as I said earlier, if you have a family history, and I know efforts are being made to go to biological testing, to go to genetic testing, where women can be diagnosed at a much earlier. I know the government is certainly working to have those things, and that's in collaboration with other institutions. They're working to really bring that on board so that women can know at an earlier stage, their risk. So we can detect that earlier, and certainly you can have early intervention. But I also want to, I don't want us to miss this, because this is something which, a lot of the things we do contribute to, apart from family history, which you cannot change. We don't change who our parents are, but we can certainly change the environment. And a lot of the things that has happened over maybe the last 40 to 50 years has contributed to cancer. The WHO has actually reported that by 2030, and this is include breast cancer, all types of cancer, you will see an increase by 25%. Now, why? Because of those imaging, those detectors that we have at the airport, those scanners that you have to go through, exposes you to radiation. The cell phone exposes you to radiation. Your computer exposes you to radiation. The microwave exposes you to radiation. And so you see, our lifestyle has changed, Yeah, our lifestyle has changed within the last 30 to 40 years, where, we're becoming a victim of our own invention, where our scientific development and then everything emits some amount of radiation, and these are things which we have developed for the convenience of life. And because of they do emit some amount of radiation, and that the cell phone that we're using, or computers, all of these things which makes life much easier for us. We use them, and those do contribute, as I indicated, that the scanners at the airport that we have to go through whenever we travel, that also exposes us to radiation, and that's a major risk factor. Smoking remains an important risk factor, and that's why countries have legislation to prevent smoking in public. We have such a legislation in Guyana that was approved in National Assembly many years ago. We just need to ensure that we have strict reinforcement. But those are some of the steps that has been taken to not just to reduce the risk of breast cancer, but cancer in the whole. But also, an important factor is our diet, what we eat. What we eat is what we get. And I think with the introduction of fast foods, which of course I'm not here to set those, we know all of those things do contribute to the economy, but the facts are that fast foods and saturated fats, they do contribute to cancer. Preservatives, using preserved foods. Most of the societies where you have a low risk of breast and other types of cancer, a person that consumes fresh food and vegetables. You using anytime you to have a conversation, let's say with someone who would lived to 80 or 90 years, and you ask them, what's the key to this? And they would say to you, well, sweet potatoes, fresh vegetables, fruits and vegetables. I don't use any fast foods. I don't use any canned foods, because these canned foods are preserved. The actual preservative that we use is carcinogenic. Saltpeter or sodium nitrite, that is used to preserve sausage and salami and all of those things that you consume on a daily basis. These are known carcinogens. And so the whole issue of education, and so that persons can eat healthy and use fresh fruits and vegetables. The other factor is that a lot of the chemicals that we use in agriculture, we live in an era worldwide where we have to increase production, and a lot of those chemicals, a lot of the ripeners use those chemicals used to force, to stabilize food, so as to preserve it for a long period, and also to force ripening as well. These ripeners, using many fruits that we consume, fertilizers and everything else, they all add their contribution to the whole issue of cancer. You know, um, when I was a kid, we used glass bottles. Now we're using plastic. and the plastic bottles, if they're not BPA free, because BPA is carcinogenic, polychlorinated biphenyls. There are many studies that have actually done to show that the BPA, the polychlorinated biphenyls, which you find in plastic, particularly if you freeze it. You put your plastic stuff in the freezer to make ice cream, and when you freeze it, it expands, and the carcinogen from the plastic gets into the food, and we consume that. So we move from glass to plastic to make it more convenient. But that is also contributed to what we're seeing now in terms of cancer.
Okay, I have a question for you here. What can you tell our listeners? What are the effects of radiation on the human body? How the smallest percentage of radiation will affect the human body?
Well, what radiation? You speak about the biological effects of radiation. What radiation does, it causes mutation. Basically that's what it does. It causes mutation. You see, I said earlier that cancer is a genetic disease. It means there is damage to our DNA. Now, when our DNA is damaged, and radiation can cause that. Now, what also radiation can cause, which induces mutation, is the production of what we refer to as free radicals. Free radicals is another chemistry there. But what it really means is that these are compounds that are unstable, and they're electronically unstable. And so they want for them to become stable, they would steal an electron from a compound that is rich in electron, like DNA. And so they will take an electron from our DNA, and the DNA becomes unstable, becomes damaged, and induce mutations can lead to cancer. And so that is what radiation does in terms of the biological effects of it. It induces mutation. And 80% of mutations are due to cancers, or cancers are due to, as a result of mutations. 80% of mutations, they can contribute to cancers, yes.
I read somewhere where it said that once radiation enters your body, it never leaves. Is that true?
Well, that's true. It causes damage. But the thing about it is that radiation depends on, it can be accumulated, and that's the reason why, like, persons who are working in the X-ray department, and that's why these are usually outbound, these imaging where you have radiation, that's why persons have to wear protective clothing, and you have to be very careful in terms of I know in what you usually do is that in these areas you wear what you call a radiation detector, which will, if there is any leakage, let's say in the area where let's say you're doing imaging studies, for example, and if there's leakage, you can become exposed. But if you have on a radiation detector, what it does, it will detect that leakage. It could make an alarm, but also what those radiation badges do, it's observe some amount of radiation, and when, let's say, a period of a few 2 to 3 months, you can take that for testing, and that will determine how much radiation you would have observed. And so let someone working in a particular area where there is leakage of radiation, and when that badge is tested and it is shown that it is above the level that is prescribed, therefore you have to do the relative investigation so as to detect where there are leakages, and so you can that can be corrected. And that is done in any, that's a standard occupational health and safety policy that is practiced in any environment where even students working in the lab, myself, when I was in the UK, I had to wear radiation badges, had to wear protective clothing, and so you had to at some point take badges for protection, for inspection rather, and so as to determine the amount of radiation that you would have been exposed to, and so that
Doc, when we come back, we'll take a short commercial break now. When we come back, we'll continue discussion. So audience don't go nowhere. We'll be right back.
Flights to Guyana have never been cheaper. Check out these non-stop direct fares from JFK to Guyana. One way from $150 and round trip from $344. From Guyana to New York, one way from $210 and round trip from $360. These are non-stop direct flights to and from Guyana on American, Caribbean, or JetBlue. These cheap fares will not last, so call TravelSpan today. In New York at 718-845-0437. That's 718-845-0437. In Georgetown, call 227-1701. And in Berbice, call 337-4287.
जन्म जन्म का साथ है तुम्हारा हमारा.
Bollywood on the Beach is a family and friends event with Bollywood Entertainment. July 14th to the 18th, enjoy a 5 days and 4 nights all-inclusive vacation with your family and friends and your culture. Performers from India, Pakistan, Trinidad and Guyana will be live at the resorts with your favorite Bollywood songs. In Punta Cana, Dominican Republic, stay in the family section or in the adults-only section and enjoy over 12 restaurants, 11 bars, 7 pools, play areas, spas, and exclusive beach area. Your all-inclusive Bollywood on the Beach vacation is from $1,095 per person, which includes your airfare, transfer, hotel, and all you can eat and drink. Make it a family and friends reunion in Punta Cana, Dominican Republic. Flights available from all U.S. cities, Canada, Trinidad, and Guyana. For rates, date, and more info, call TravelSpan at 212-243-0865. In Canada, call 647-557-6200. In Trinidad, call Amerals at 645-1604. And in Guyana, 227-1701, or visit us at travelspan.com. Announcing Curry Competition 2022 in Cancun, Mexico.
Hey, y'all take your lights on past week? Last year, y'all take all my cousins to Punta Cana and slaughter them. I drink and sport up. Now y'all want to take another set of us to Cancun? Well, yes. And wait, now y'all taking Raymond Ramnarine, Terry G plus Tassa. Okay, y'all take Raymond, Terry, and the Tassa and go along your way.
Bring it down, down, ding. Bring it down, down. Bring it down, down, ding. Hey yo, my sweetheart, say I'm addicted to you.
Make it a family and friends reunion. Curry Competition 2022 in Cancun, Mexico on July 28th to August 1st. For more info, call TravelSpan at 212-243-0865. In Canada, call 647-557-6200. In Trinidad, call Amerals at 645-1604. And in Guyana, 227-1701, or visit us at travelspan.com.
Are you looking for investment opportunities or retirement or even to relocate to Florida? Then Orlando is the place for you. Great deals with spacious land are available. Call Shanisa Jabbar for all your realtor needs at 321-217-1556. That's 321-217-1556. Or email her at shanisajabbar@gmail.com.
Welcome back to Globespan. To all our viewers, we thank you for listening. Tonight we have with us Dr. Emanuel Cummings, from the Professor of Medicine at the University of Guyana, and he's also the Deputy Vice Chancellor, to talk about cancer. Dr. Cummings, I want to ask you this question quickly. If you're telling us that radiation is bad, it creates cancer in our body, then why is it when someone has cancer, they're treated with radiation?
Well, radiotherapy it kills. Let me tell you, chemotherapy kill cancer cells, but it also causes cancer. You know that?
Okay.
Um, Radiotherapy, it kills cancer cells, but these, you see, that's the thing. That's why we speak about new therapies, because what studies have shown is that both chemotherapy and radiotherapy, they kill cancer cells, but they also kill the normal cells as well. They kill cancer cells, but they also kill the normal cells. And I've done some studies in the UK where we actually saw this. We use a very well-known cancer drug, cisplatin, that's used in the treatment of breast cancer, and we actually saw that it killed the normal cells as well as the cancer cells. But also, what studies are also showing is that you're treating someone with chemotherapy, but it also causes other types of cancer. So you should use it because that is what is recommended. I'm not saying you should take your chemotherapy, but and it has quite a lot of side effects, quite a lot of side effects. So you should take it because that is what the WHO has prescribed, right? Researchers should, but then there's some studies which we are now doing to complement chemotherapy, which we'll talk about later. So whilst you're taking your chemotherapy, what this is an adjuvant therapy that you can use, which reduces the side effects of chemotherapy and makes chemotherapy more sensitive, and also that protects the normal cells. So see, that's what research is. Cancer research is a huge area, and everyone wants to find a way for cancer patients. Why should it only be 5 years? And I know of persons who have survived. They would use chemotherapy and use other forms of treatment, and they've won the battle. But also, there are other persons who have not won the battle, and because they develop other kinds of because of the of the consequences of it. But it has worked. It has worked. But there's some work which we're doing now, which we started in the UK and we want to do locally, which supplements chemotherapy, and which will later on in the program I will talk a bit about that.
Okay. I want to ask you about this here, prostate cancer. You mentioned it before, but it appears in Guyana and one around the world, but I'm going with Guyana here. Black males have a high incidence of prostate cancer. They account for 65% of prostate cancer. Now, when we talk about cervical cancer, breast cancer, Indian women account for 45%. Afro-Guyanese women account for 39%. These are breast cancer results. And cervical cancer, Afro women also account for 35%, 39% of it. Indigenous women is actually infinity. It's actually infinity, nothing there. Why this just attack Indians or Afro and Indo-Guyanese?
Were you speaking to cervical cancer or
all
breast?
three of them?
Well, I think
Prostate, cervical, and breast.
The studies, breast, as I said, vitamin D also deficiency is being linked to breast cancer. Studies have shown that in Guyana, you have both in Indo and Afro Guyanese women do develop breast cancer. It seems to be more common based on the data or studies, because I'm not only referring to Guyana but across the Caribbean. And vitamin D deficiency has been linked, but also a lot of it has to do with your reproductive history. If you have kids, if you don't have kids, at what age you had kids, if, for example, the length of time you had your menstrual cycle, when it started, and all of those things. And if you go back, let's go back 40, 50 years ago, we never used to see so many cases because the women were making 10 and 12 children. Because when you're pregnant, you produce an alpha-fetoprotein, and alpha-fetoprotein protects, it's a tumor marker, but it's also produced during pregnancy, and it protects the woman from breast cancer. And so nulliparity so the number of children you have, if you don't have children, when you started to make children, and I also want to show this correlation. If you started to make children at an early age, you have a high risk of cervical cancer. And the data and the studies are actually showing that if you started to make children before age 21, why 21? Because 21 is the biological age of maturity. That's the biological age of maturity, 21. And so, from what I know, indigenous population, there seems to be a higher risk of cervical cancer. It's loosely associated with teenage pregnancy, and that's why the WHO, the UNICEF, do ask girls to delay. And these are some of the educational ways and how you can reduce the risk. Delay your first sexual contact before age 21. Delay. Don't have multiple sex partners because the virus, the HPV, human papillomavirus, which causes cervical cancer, can be transmitted sexually, and so multiple partners. As I said, the age, but also in terms of cervical cancer. So where you have teenage pregnancy, you will see in any community where you see that you also have a high risk. The breast cancer, as I said, I outlined some of the risk factors that are associated with that in terms of number of children you have, when you have them, or what age, the length of, when you start your menstrual cycle, when you approach menopause, the use of contraceptives. We just did some studies. These are with some final-year medical students, and we actually saw this in relation to breast cancer, and this is debatable. Now, we saw the use of deodorant. I don't want to open kind of worms, but this is still something that is debated in the literature in terms of the use of antiperspirant deodorant as having a risk, the exposure to that. But that is something I don't want it to. It's not fully well established, but the literature is still back and forth with that. But the other factors which I mentioned, smoking, alcohol use, alcohol, all of these, family history, as I mentioned earlier, mutation in the BRCA1 and BRCA2 gene, all of these are factors which can contribute to breast cancer. So what we want as girls is to delay sexual contact after 21, and also don't take too late to make your children. And make more children. We need more people in Guyana. We need to increase our population. So make 5 and 6 children. Our economy is going to grow. We need more people. And so by making, and so also what happens here also is that more kids you have, more breastfeeding, less risk of developing breast cancer. And also studies have also pointed to the use of contraceptives. Right? Contraceptives also, it's another factor which contributes to breast cancer.
Charles, over to you.
Dr. Cummings, very interesting what you're telling us there, and you have some of the solutions already. And, so, I mean, it might sound, facetious to say this, but if our women delay sexual activity until after 21, the likelihood of they getting cervical cancer and breast cancer is reduced. Similarly, you said if our female make more children, the probability of having breast cancer also is reduced. So those are some solutions, and I hope that your advice is taken. I mean, today's women, and I'm not bashing women, please, they look at their career and they look at, everything else. They're not more, sorry to use that term, they're very concerned with the way they look and their figures and so on. So having children can displace that. And you are saying that those are some of the things that we need to give up, hopefully, to reduce the effect of breast cancer in women.
Yes, use of oral contraceptives. The thing about it, the fact is life has changed. We have more professional women now. And so our parents, most of us, our parents were housewives, and so they made 10 and 12 kids. And so they had the time, all fairness to the women now, they're professional, and they want a career. We live in a world of equity, equality among the genders, and so therefore, it's a woman's right to choose. But the point is that if we're to compare our parents to ourselves, the women, our age, they have not made as much children, and that's why you never used to see so many cases in
the days of old, there was less breast cancer.
Yeah, and also, there are other factors, but also in general, the dietary lifestyle has also contributed, to our foreparents. They would have ate fresh foods, as I would have mentioned, vegetables, rich in antioxidants, phytochemicals that have a lot of anti-cancer properties. But the other thing I think which we need to, and this is something we can collaborate with in agriculture, is to test our soil for selenium. Many studies have actually shown that soils that are deficient in selenium, that population has increased risk of developing cancer, because the vegetables that are grown in that particular environment will get the selenium from the soil. And so if the soil is deficient in selenium, so of course you can get these multivitamins now, they're fortified with selenium, because selenium is an antioxidant. And so if there's deficiency of selenium in the soil of itself, so our vegetables, we need to work with the folks in agriculture, to test to see what the levels of selenium we have in the soil. And that will also be translated to selenium in the vegetables. And so high levels of selenium can also help.
That's an excellent, that's an excellent point, Doc. It's a collaboration with all the players, agriculture and medicine and so on. And I'm watching the Animal Channel with this, animal doctor, and he was talking about horses feeding in grasses that are deficient in nutrient, and it affects their muscles. So yeah, I totally agree with you that if our soil is deficient in some nutrient, it can affect us. But Doc, let's talk about solutions now. I know we know the problem. For those who already have cancer and they're looking for solutions, what are some of the things? I know the Guyana Shield, as we are told, they have almost all the medicine that the world needs. In Guyana, we are blessed with a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables. Can you tell our audience what are some of the fruits and vegetables they should consume that will help the body to fight against cancer cells?
Well, before I go to that, I just want to talk a bit about omega-3. It's one of my areas of research, omega-3, and where we get and we can get it from food as well, omega-3. When we look at the Mediterranean and we look at the development of cancer of itself, and what the literature has said to us is that cancer came about because of an imbalance between omega-3 and omega-6. Now, so omega-3, foods that are rich in omega-3 are fish, the fish oil that you give for persons with high cholesterol. So the fish oil, that is omega-3. So flax seeds and fish, and tuna and these sources, they are good sources of omega-3. Now, omega-6, you get it like from sunflower oil, corn flour oil. Now, what the data or the literature is showing that cancer came up, well, of course, one of the factors that might have contributed to increasing cancer is because our diets, we changed our diets. When we were created to consume more omega-3 in relation to omega-6. I guess we look at the Eskimos with a rich fish diet, they don't have cancer. They don't have heart disease. They don't have cancer. Because the omega-3 is considered to be anti-inflammatory. The omega-6 is pro-inflammatory. So you hear me now? Right. So as I was trying to explain, and I'm trying not to be too scientific, because this program is meant for the layman, right? For the ordinary persons to understand. So we need to listen. You hear me now? Good. As I was saying, that we saw a rise in the prevalence of cancer because of an imbalance that occurred over the years with respect to omega-3 and omega-6. Now, omega-3 is we'll get that from fish oil, from seafood, whale oil, cod liver oil, tuna, flaxseed, and all of these. Omega-6 from walnuts and corn and sunflower oil. Now, Western oil has omega-6. Now, coconut oil has both omega-6 and omega-3. Now, the issue is that the omega-3 is anti-inflammatory. In other words, it reduces infections, for the benefit of a layman. I use the word inflammation. The omega-6 is pro-inflammatory. Now, when you look at all cancers, inflammation, and this was proposed by Virchow since in the 19th century, that cancer occur as a result of inflammation. And so when our diet switch with more omega-6 to more omega-3, which is pro-inflammatory, we became prone to cancer. And so that's why, and there's a lot of studies now, and that's so many work that I'm doing now, to supplement chemotherapy with omega-3. From a nutritional standpoint, if you're to supplement it, what it does, so a patient with cancer, if you supplement the diet, and the literature is full of this, but omega-3, it makes the chemotherapy more sensitive. The drug becomes more sensitive, and it's less side effects. It also, in I don't want to say certain things, I don't want to scare anyone. But the omega-3 also kill the primordial cells. Because sometimes you speak about cancer going into recession. It goes into recession. And it comes back within 5 or 6 years, or sometimes 10 years, depends. When you consume omega-3, when those cells goes into recession, it kills those cells. So many studies, and that is the point where we need to get at, where we're currently trying to develop a project to supplement the chemotherapy with omega-3 so that it can make the chemotherapy more effective, reduces the side effects, and also kill those primordial cells and protect the normal cells, which chemotherapy sometimes.
So, Doc.
So that's
if I can
that's a big project.
put a thing there. So omega-3, you said, is fish oil and fish product. What else can give us omega-3? What other fruits or vegetables or animal product?
No. Well, you wouldn't get it from animal product. It's mostly flaxseed and chia seeds. You know, these seeds. That's why these seeds are popular now. Why you think all over the place people using sunflower seeds and chia seeds and flax seeds and all of that? Because that's where, you know, apricots and all of these things, because they are rich in omega-3, cod liver oil. You know, the vegetables, what the green vegetables do, they have antioxidants. Because remember, as I said in the beginning, the green vegetables, the beet, you know, those things that are rich in the antioxidants. Because you see, what happens in carcinogenesis are mutations. You know, these are damage to the DNA all the time. And when the DNA is damaged, it causes cellular changes. So you have the genomic changes, which are damage to the DNA, and that results in cellular changes. And so if you consume a lot of green vegetables, which are rich in antioxidants, it reduces the damage that is done by these carcinogens. You know, so lots of fruits and vegetables, but you know, even though even if those fruits,
Doc, your voice, we're not hearing you again.
Even if those fruits and vegetables, you know, they have to be fresh.
Doc,
your voice.
You're going into
Yeah.
a little better, but can you come up a little more? We're hardly seeing you. Yeah.
See me now? Right. So, you know, vegetables, you know, fruits, you know, the spinach.
Can you move
Doc,
your hand away from
if you
your
take your hand away from your mic, because I think it's blocking the speech when you talk.
You getting it now?
So take away your hand from where the speaker is.
I don't have my hands on the speaker.
You don't have it there? Okay, go ahead, Doc.
Are you getting me now?
Yeah.
Right. So, you know, vegetables, you know, yellow, green, purple vegetables, you know, cabbage, you know, like a beet, the pomegranates and the turmerics and the ginger, you know, all of those things that were used when we had the pandemic policy that became very popular. They have anti-inflammatory action. As indicated, cancer occur as a consequence of inflammation, and we should be able to see certainly a movie that all those ginger and turmeric and fresh green vegetables, you know, vegetables.
Doc, we can take a short break and we come back because we want to fix your speaker. You know, we're not hearing you very clear. So we'll take a short 1 minute break and come back.
Flights to Guyana have never been cheaper. Check out these non-stop direct fares from JFK to Guyana. One way from 150 and round trip from 344. From Guyana to New York, one way from 210 and round trip from 360. These are non-stop direct flights to and from Guyana on American, Caribbean, or JetBlue. These cheap fares will not last, so call Travelspan today. In New York at 718-845-0437. That's 718-845-0437. In Georgetown, call 227-1701. and in Berbice, call 337-4287.
Thank you again for staying with us as we have Dr. Emanuel Cummings, that we're talking about some of the solutions to cancer for those of us who have cancer. Some of the things that Dr. Cummings is saying that we need to get into more fruits and vegetables, especially the green vegetables. Dr. Cummings, you want to continue?
Yes, as I was saying, because you see, the whole thing about cancer, these are inflammatory processes. The omega-3, which have anti-inflammatory, and also the vegetables, these rich in phytochemicals, which have antioxidant properties. The vitamin C's, you get your vitamin C, vitamin A, vitamin D, all of these, they tend to have anti-cancer properties. A lot of work is done worldwide with respect to green tea.
Dr. Cummings, something is wrong again with your voice on the phone. I don't know if you're moving it or you're going off or something.
I'm not.
I'm hearing you now when you speak, when you respond there just now. But as you continue to speak, something is moving away and your voice coming over as if you're really remote and distant.
You hearing me now?
Yes.
I think the internet might have been fluctuating. I think it could well be a case of that. The internet is maybe
okay.
It is fluctuating. But yes, so I think don't use canned foods, preserved foods, fresh, the dairy products are also associated with cancer, particularly breast cancer. The soya milk is highly recommended. The other these milk that are vegetable in origin, these plant products, those are much more healthier than animal products itself. Dairy, eggs, and all the like. Exercise is also important. We didn't talk about obesity, which is also a risk factor for all types of cancer. And so physical exercise, when you exercise, you certainly strengthen your immune system, and we didn't have a chance to talk about this. But the immune system could also helps you to fight cancer. And so when you exercise, 3 to 4 times, at least for half an hour, 3 to 4 times per week, that it's immune system opens up your appetite and helps you to stave off the effects of carcinogenesis. All of these are a lifestyle which we should somehow practice across
but Doc, if a guy rides a bicycle, as a guy or a girl rides a bicycle, or someone works in the farm, or you work in the fields, a lot of physical work, is that enough for exercise, or they need to do more exercise?
Well, working in the fields, that's enough physical exercise. I guess we check our farmers who work in the cane fields and the rice fields. They have a low risk of cancer. They do have a low risk of cancer. And we who are we work in the office, we kind of sedentary. we eat late at nights, tend to develop central obesity. So those are some practices. You know, the thing about this is that the normal lifestyle practices um, that will prevent diabetes, that will keep your cholesterol levels normal, are the same. Some of it are the same lifestyle practices, you know, which we need to do to reduce the risk of cancer. You know, the thing about it is that cancer, um, we should be focusing on trying to prevent it. But once someone has it, of course, you know, the nutritional supplement is important. You know, things like broccoli, cauliflower, all of those, you know,
green
foods
vegetables.
which,
Doc,
you know,
I know you said
like
our
grains.
lifestyle has changed and we're using a lot of fast food and we're doing microwave and we're using a lot of pre-cooked food and so on, which is not good for our body, as you said. What would you recommend that, you know, in Guyana, we talk of, you know, eating a lot of roti, eating a lot of rice, a lot of starch. Should we now balance that with a lot more vegetables and fruits that you talk about? Should our lifestyle be fashioned based on that now?
Yeah, definitely. You know, but you know, exercise is also, as I mentioned, but certainly, you know, the ground provisions, the sweet potato, the yams, you know, these are things which you should consume. Rice in limited amounts, you know, starch. See, because starch can be converted into fats, and that can also predispose us to obesity, and then we can have the risk of developing cancer. So, in other words, when you look at the pyramid, the bottom of the pyramid, which is wider, it should be vegetables, all the fruits and vegetables, and at the top it is smaller. That should be our carbohydrates, rice and flour products. And what is highly recommended is high fiber as well. You know, high fiber, which is non-digestible. What happens with that is, you know, we sometimes we often see that death starts in the colon. A lot of things happens there, but the food that we eat spends a long time in the colon, and a lot of the foods can have carcinogens in them. And so when you consume a lot of these complex carbohydrates, high fiber diet, which is non-digestible, what it does, it protects the colon from these carcinogens. So the carcinogens which can be part of our diet, the high fiber, it lines the walls of our colon and prevents the direct contact of the carcinogen and the colon. So in addition to that, because the high fiber is non-digestible, it takes it out. It takes it out and takes out all of the carcinogen. But also, high fiber also have other kinds of side effects, which is a topic for another discussion. But in this context, you know, you use your high fiber, which helps in the elimination. Lots of water, you know, water is a purifier. You know, keep yourself hydrated. It keeps your urinary system, your excretory system more functional. You know, and so it excretes a lot of the toxins. And so you drink water. In the morning, you drink at least 8 pints of water, 8 glasses of water. Sometimes, you know, that's recommended for the exercise. You don't consume the aerated or the commercial drinks. You use a natural smoothie that we talked about, the natural vegetables. You reduce the consumption of sugars. You know, these cancer cells like sugar. They love sugar. They grow faster in glucose. They like to grow in glucose. And so you use less sugar and more of the the vegetables. You know, I have an aunt. You know, she's still very much alive. She's in her 90s, and you know, many years ago when I went to visit her, and she said to me, she eats Karila 3 times a week. So there's a great lesson there. And kale, you know, we have kale now in the markets. Um, You go to the supermarket, and local farmers are also growing kale. Kale is considered a superfood. You make that's good to make it the green smoothie, Brussels sprouts, cauliflower, all of those, um, these type of vegetables, broccoli, and all of
Doc,
those. All those are,
do we eat them raw or do we steam them to eat it?
you steam them. You steam them. You don't overcook them. You use them. The broccoli especially at 100 degrees centigrade. Partially cooked. That's when it is best prescribed.
That's the best described.
And this is
Which food?
rich in antioxidants.
Which food give us fiber, Doc, that you talk about?
Well, you get fiber from vegetables. You get it from whole grain rice, whole grain bread. Whole wheat products, cereals. All these whole grain cereals. That's where you get your fiber, and also you get your fiber from fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables are rich, especially the skin. The skin of fruits. These days, the pineapples, you can blend the pineapples with the skin, and then you strain it. But don't make a smoothie with it. But at least the skin is where you have a lot of vitamins and a lot of fiber, a lot of pectins. You find that in the skin of fruits. The apples, the mangoes. You use the watermelon. You can use the skin. These things are rich, in fiber. So those are, as I did mention, the cereals, the whole grain cereals. When you're purchasing cereals, you look at the whole grain ones. Those are the ones that are rich in fiber.
Doc, are you telling us, this is strange now, are you telling us for the mangoes, we should eat the skin as we eat the mangoes? The ripe skin or the green skin? Because I know with green mango we eat the green skin, but what are the ripe ones?
Yeah. The ripe ones, you blend the skin and you make juice and eat it. The skin, let me tell you, the skin is what has most of the vitamins, most of the nutrients, and most fruits are in the skin. Seed in the skin, the things that we throw away, that's what we should be eating. Most of the studies are showing now the skin and the seed. That's where you have everything.
So the seed of the watermelon, the seed of the pawpaw, the seed of all those things, we should be blending and drinking them.
All those things. Our foreparents used to soak the pine skin and the pawpaw skin and make drink.
Yeah.
Like group like that, And so, of course, the pawpaw, you can't eat the pawpaw skin, but of course you can make drink with it. But the mangoes, you can blend. I usually blend the mango skin with cherries and those things, with carrots, and so you blend it, and you make a lovely juice. And it's rich in fiber, and all the nutrients that you get. Skin of fruits where you have most of the minerals and all these micronutrients, all the phytochemicals.
Doc, I know you're at disadvantage using the cell phone, but can you refocus because you're going away from the cell phone a little? Yeah. Sorry about that. You gotta a little more. You gotta come this year. Bring it. You're out of focus. Put it the other way. Yeah. Great. Excellent. Sorry about that. I know your cell phone is a disadvantage today. But Doc, what about microwave food? Is it good for us to eat microwave food?
Radiation. So I will not recommend that. Use the toaster oven or heat it up the traditional way. You see, as I said, all of these things they emit some amount of radiation. And so we become a victim of our own invention. Microwave, it's full of radiation.
No good. You should throw away the microwave and just hot the food regular. Put it on the stove and heat it up.
Studies have shown that you're exposed to radiation when you use your microwave. The cell phone that we're using, we're exposed to radiation. But I guess you can do better at this time. But the company we're competing, as I mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
Okay. These are all factors that contribute.
So as you said from the beginning, Doc, the technology is part contributing to our killing ourselves.
There is a community in China where the average age is 80. and they have no technology. They live the normal fruits, vegetables they want. You know, they don't drive, and you know, they use all of the natural things they consume, very traditional, and they haven't needed it. You know, the bok choy and the spinach and watermelons, kale, the watermelon, right? That's what they consume. Yellow, green, red vegetables.
Okay.
That's what they use.
Yeah. Doc?
Dr. Cummings, I'm reading where they said they have a new drug, the immunotherapy drug that is saving lives. Have you heard about that? I'm sure you heard about that, but have you tried that out in Guyana?
I'm certain it might have been used, but that is something that is now developing. Based on the literature, immunotherapy, it's between 15 to 20% success rate. Immunotherapy. But that is, you see, depends on the type of cancers. That's why you can use immunotherapy. But certainly, you know, that is now growing. It's an area that is now developing, which certainly, I think, the much more research they can do. So the whole thing is that the immune system, because the immune system is linked to cancer. When see, that's what prevent person, like if you're HIV positive, for example, you develop a risk of developing cancer. So when your immune system is affected, it predisposes you to cancer. So and so when you strengthen your immune system, and this you can do from natural ways you can do it from a dietary standpoint, exercise. It helps you to fight off from cancer, you know, when your immune system is strong, you know. And so immunotherapy, also using that backdrop, immunotherapy is one of the areas now that is being talked about. It is being used to some extent, but they haven't gotten a 100% success based on the literature, between 50 to 20% success rate in terms of immunotherapy.
In Guyana, the figures are showing, or data revealed, or studies have shown where 73% of the Amerindian population, 47% of the Indo-Guyanese population, and 34% of the Afro-Guyanese population are turning to bush medicine, herbal medicine. How prevalent is this in the country?
Well,
and is this a cure or a solution to not only cancer, but any type of diseases?
Well, people have been using this for, you know, as I said, the pandemic has made it even much more prevalent, you know, and you know, the thing about the studies, that's the problem with that. I've done some studies, as I said, using the Carilla, which you call Nomordica, which is a vegetable. But you see, the problem with bush medicine is that it's not, unless this is researched and documented. I know there is some benefits to it. In the literature, you see a lot of these substances, these herbs, whatever you call them, they do have some benefits, but the problem is the dosage. How many leaves is equal to how many milligrams? We don't know. So unless those studies are done, and so what many countries do is that these natural products, they do experimental study, laboratory-based studies. I've done some of that. Laboratory-based studies in order to test it. You know, you can grow cancer cells in the lab and you test it. You know, you look at the dose and you test it. And then from there, what you're supposed to go to clinical trials. And once from clinical trials it shows that it is working, well, then you can then go to manufacturing. But that can take hundreds of years. They can take a very long time to do that. But but of course, but there are stories, a lot of stories that I know about where persons have taken natural remedies and they have gotten some amount of success. But the issue there is the amount, is the control, because no one knows how many milligrams of whatever it is in a leaf or in 10 leaves, because this person will tell you use 3 leaves and 5 leaves and how much water, but there's no control in terms of the dose. So person have to be very, very careful using it as much as it may be beneficial. It may be beneficial, but also it can become toxic for the liver, and it could cause overdose in terms of toxic effects in the liver. And so you have to use it in moderation, because unless, what I know is that persons have actually packaged a lot of those things in teas, which means that you have a dose. And so that's one way in which you can control the amount of whatever substance that you may use. But I know worldwide it is an area that is gaining momentum, and I'm certain that it will have some amount of benefit for us in the future. But just that we have to be, I wouldn't want to tell anyone to, I know for a fact, but you check the literature, some of it has worked, but in terms of research in the laboratory, in laboratory animals, in experimental studies, many of it has worked, and unless it goes to clinical trial, where you have control over the amount that you give, and then also you have to be very, very careful of combining it with the conventional, which can also cause toxic effect on the liver and all of that. So you have to be very, very careful with that.
I'm going to give you
But,
a figure here that is baffling, and it might be baffling to all our listeners as well. 17% of the world's population rely on spirituality whenever they're sick. They do not see a doctor. They do not use any medicine. I am assuming they use prayers. And the result, the success rate is between 7 and 11%. Your comments?
Belief kills and cure. A lot of things starts, in our mind. The psychologist will tell you, think positive, and when you think, you see, a lot of our illness and the way we feel, starts from our, and that's why, person need counseling. Whatever you're diagnosed with diabetes, cancer, whatever, you should see a psychologist and let him counsel you or get his treatment, and so you can have a positive outlook. And I think that is what is necessary, And so I think that a lot of it, as I said, a lot of the biochemical changes that takes place in our bodies has a lot to do with the way we think and the way we believe. And if we believe this is going to work, psychologically we work. And so, so our mind, the way, so if we have, many times when you're sick, you get depressed and you get more sick because you're depressed, you feel, you think negative. So it's always good to think positive. And it goes a far way in adding to the success of your outcome, of your treatment if you think positive. And that's why I think in modern medicine there should be you should be exposed to psychotherapy, to guide you and to provide you that emotional support, that psychological support, family support. All of that helps, in making you feel better and having in having positive outcomes. But again, I said, belief kills and cure. You believe something work, it work. If you believe it doesn't work, it's not going to work. So that is, when in the UK, the British Journal published, I think it was about 2 or 3 years ago, where they were saying that cancers can be due to bad luck. This was published in the British Journal of Medicine, right? I read this in the British Journal of Medicine, where it said that bad luck. So you can be taking all of these precautions, but you're just unlucky and develop cancer. Bad luck, So maybe you have good luck and it works. And so that is something for us to think about. Whatever helps, thank God, and say bless and whatever it is, just
In
think positive.
Ghana,
It's always good to think.
in Ghana as elsewhere, cancer has been increasing to some extent. Some countries it's decreasing and so forth, but I think in Ghana it's still increasing. Prostate cancer has been increasing. Well, cancer in general, and hypertension, diabetes, and so forth. Do you think there should be a program, a televised program once a week to bring the nation's awareness to these diseases and show them how this can be avoided if they take the right steps?
Yes, health education is always important. It's part of the structural program at the university, where we do encourage healthcare workers. They do health education. You're supposed to educate patients. You're supposed to educate the population. You're supposed to develop messages. There's a lot of that. It happens, but it's for these persons, to listen to these messages, and not just take action from one day, but be continuous. And I think, the environment itself. These are things which should help. Groups. You have the Cancer Society, you have youth groups, whatever means we should using these handbills, whatever strategy. Facebook persons hardly watch television these days. They're on social media. I think WhatsApp, whatever group, we should be able to share information, making the public much, more and more aware of healthy lifestyle. That is something that is never too much. That is something that should be ongoing. And that not just health workers, but everyone, at the level of the church, at the level of the mandir, at the level of the mosque, at the schools, wherever. These are educational programs which we should continue. I know we have certain advertisement. I know in primary healthcare facilities, you have these, it is done, but it's something that we have to continue to do. I don't ever think it is ever too much, because you have to keep driving these messages over and over and over again. And persons will adhere, persons will not adhere. But what is needed is that those who would have benefited from such education and they have success stories, we can then use those persons to to help others who still might be a bit reluctant, so that they can change. It is always better, to use cancer survivors, persons who would have survived, to come and talk and to share their experiences of what they would have done. I have a relative in the US who was diagnosed with cancer 30 years ago and was sent home to die and is still alive. And she said, look, I'm not going to die, and took a whole bunch of all kinds of nutritional support and went back 6 weeks after, and there is no cancer, and 30 years is still alive. That's a true story. And there are many others.
Thank you.
So those are...
I know, Dr. Cummings, you have a lot of more stories to tell us, but we come to program time. Do you want to say anything in closing tonight?
Well, it's been a privilege. Thanks to Globespan for inviting me, and I can have this chat. I call it a chat, with yourself and the public. I hope it will be beneficial. I think most of us are much aware now of some of the preventative measures that we need to take. And, diet is a key in supplementing chemotherapy, in helping us to improve on the quality of our life. Exercise And we should not take these things for granted. And the whole issue of try to consume as much fresh fruits and vegetables, exercise, as I always say, drinks a lot of water, get a lot of sleep, and think positive. And all of those practices will certainly help us all in this fight against cancer.
Thank you, Dr. Cummings. And Dr. Rose, anything in closing?
Yes, as a normally will say, internet providers, we are asking you to do a better job in providing internet to this nation. Minimum wage, as I said before, should be at least $125,000 a month starting salary for nurses, teachers, police officers, and other public servants. And it's about time. I read during the week where Trinidad is trying to increase its retirement age from 60 to 65. We are at 55. At 55, people are in their prime. And when they retire, they just leave and give their services to other parts of the world. We're asking the retirement age to be increased, the government to at least 62 years old. Those are my 3 Bs for this week.
Thank you, Dr. Rose. And to our audience out there, we want to thank you. You have listened to Dr. Cummings this evening. And my advice again, as Dr. Cummings have said in this program, is change your lifestyle, rest, have enough rest, change your diet. Guyana have a lot of fruits and vegetables that are fresh, a lot of fish we have, we can eat. Change our lifestyle, and that will change the possibility of us getting cancer. And for those who have cancer, we pray that you will recover and take Dr. Cummings' advice, change your diet, and you should be fine. Everything work out well. Dr. Cummings, we want to thank you for taking the time this evening to spare with us, and we look forward to having you again in the future so we can go through again some more information on cancer and some of the cures that our people can take to recover from that dreaded disease. Thank you so much for being with us.